The grim reality of banning TikTok. The US government once again wants to ban TikTok. TikTok's burst onto the scene represented a first for American consumers and officials, a popular social media app that wasn't started on Silicon Valley soil but in China. On March 13th, the US House of Representatives passed a bill to force TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to sell TikTok or else the app will be banned on American phones. As such, a ban of TikTok would eliminate an important place for Americans to speak and be heard. It would be a travesty for the free speech rights of hundreds of millions of Americans who depend on the app to communicate, express themselves, and even make a living. And perhaps, more importantly, it would add further boundaries to the global internet and disconnect us from the world. TikTok stands accused of being a conduit for the Chinese Communist Party, guzzling up sensitive user data and sending it to China. There's not much evidence to suggest that's true, except that their parent company, ByteDance, is a Chinese company, and China's government has its so-called private sector in a chokehold. The clearest problem with a TikTok ban is it would immediately wipe out a platform where 170 million Americans broadcast their views and receive information, sometimes about political happenings. In an era of mass polarization, shutting off the app would mean shutting down the ways in which millions of people, even those with unpopular views, speak on issues they care about. The other problem is that Americans have the constitutional right to access all sorts of information, even if it's deemed to be foreign propaganda. There's been little evidence to suggest that ByteDance is influencing the flow of content at the behest of the Chinese government, though there are some reports that are indeed worrying, including reports that TikTok censored videos related to the Tiananmen Square massacre, Tibetan independence, and the banned group Falun Gong. Still, the Supreme Court ruled in 1964 that Americans have the right to receive what the government deems to be foreign propaganda. The court essentially said that the act of the government stepping in and banning propaganda would be akin to censorship, and the American people need to be free to evaluate these transgressive ideas for themselves. Further, the government has repeatedly failed to pass any federal data privacy protections that would address the supposed underlying problem of TikTok gobbling up troves of U.S. user data and handing it to a Chinese parent company. Biden only made moves in February 2024 to prevent data brokers from selling U.S. user data to foreign adversaries like China, arguably a problem much bigger than one app. There's legitimate concern in Washington and elsewhere that it's not the government that controls so much of America's speech, but private companies like those bred in Silicon Valley. But the disappearance of TikTok would further empower media monopolists like Google and Meta, who already control about half of all U.S. digital ad dollars, and give them a tighter chokehold over our communication. There's already very few platforms where people speak. Removing TikTok would eliminate one of the most important alternatives we have. Since it launched in 2016, TikTok has been the most influential social media app in the world, not because it affects public policy or necessarily creates monoculture, neither are particularly true in fact, but because it has given people a totally different way to spend time online. In doing so, it disrupted the monopolies of American tech companies like Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, and forced every rival to in some way mimic its signature style. There's Facebook and Instagram Reels. Still, Americans choose to use TikTok, and their conversations will not easily port over to another platform in the event of it being banned. Instead, cutting through the connective tissue of the app will sever important ways that Americans, especially young Americans, are speaking at a time when those conversations are as rich as ever. The reality is that if Congress wanted to solve our data privacy problems, they would solve our data privacy problems. But instead they want to ban TikTok, so they found a way to try and do so. Our First Amendment will once again be put to the test, a free speech case that's very much not in the abstract, but one whose results will affect 170 million Americans who just want to use an app and have their voices be heard.